The concept of divinity is a complex and multifaceted one that has been explored by philosophers, theologians, and artists for centuries. So God is the all-powerful divine being, supreme over all, and then a lesser or spiritual beings, or the angels, or the watchers. But who are the angels or the watchers exactly? Are they divine? Are they human? Are they spiritual? Why we are exploring this matter is because in the biblical text it is reported that the angels or watchers came down from heaven when they see that earthly women were beautiful and take some of the earthly women for their wives and have sexual relationships with them that resulted in offsprings. So the earthly women have children that were fathered by the angels or the watchers. So how could this happen if the angels are not human and the angels or watchers are divine and they are spirits and they are all-knowing? How could they shred their divinity or their spiritual concept and become human or come in man form to have a sexual relationship with earthly women and bring forth giants? So, if the angels or watchers are spiritual beings, not having blood, how they were able to have sexual relationships with earthly women, or any being to have sexual relationship, a rush of blood need to go to certain place, but angels and watchers do not have blood because they are divine. Were the watchers or the angels human or were they divine? The forbidden truth about the watchers in the ancient religious texts. Do we know if the watchers were human or divine beings? On one hand, we are told that they were divine by the book of Enoch and the book of Jubilees. But on the other hand, the book of Genesis suggested that the watchers may be human. Let us look at what it meant to be divine. The definition of divinity depends upon one's belief system. In mythology, fallen angels can lose their divine status and become mortal beings. For example, in the book of Enoch, as it is the opinion of Christians. So were the fallen angels or the watchers? Was it a mythology or it was real? Were they like Zeus, that was considered divine in Greek mythology? Zeus was the king of the gods and the god of the sky and thunder. He was believed to have immense power over the natural world and human affairs. So let's look at how Zeus had relationships with mortals, if it is the same way the biblical text suggested that the watchers or the fallen angels had sexual relationships with mortal women. Zeus was known for his numerous affairs with mortal women. These relationships often result in the birth of demigods, individuals with both divine and mortal blood. Some famous examples included Hercules, son of Zeus and the mortal Alcmene, Perseus, son of Zeus and the mortal Danae, Minos, son of Zeus and the mortal Europa, and who can forget his son Dionysus. Zeus, demigods' children, often played significant roles in Greek mythology, known for their extraordinary abilities and heroic deeds. But let's look at Dionysus. Was the Greek god of wine, fertility, and theater. Was he a giant like the children that the watchers or the fallen angels had with mortal women? So Dionysus, he was youthful and exuberant figure. He was associated with revelry, ecstasy, and madness. Dionysus' influence extended beyond the domain of the divine, and his myths and rituals were deeply intertwined with human culture and society. He was known for his wild and passionate nature, often leading frenzied processions and inspiring ecstatic dances. His followers, known as Maenads, would engage in ecstatic rituals, sometimes involving wild behavior and even violence. Dionysus was also a god of rebirth and renewal, symbolizing the cyclical nature of life and death. His myths often involve themes of transformation and transcendence. Does his behavior have any similarities if you compare them with the children of the fallen angels or the watchers? Does Dionysus, who was a produce of a divine being and a mortal woman, did his behavior shown any similarities between the children of the fallen angels or the watchers and the mortal woman? Was Dionysus a giant? No, Dionysus was not a giant. He was typically depicted as a youthful and slender god. While Dionysus possessed divine powers and could sometimes appear in various forms, he was not characterized by immense size or physical strength. Now let's compare another of Zeus' children to the children of fallen angels or watchers who they had with mortal women. Now let's look at Hercules. Was he a giant? Well, while he was renowned for his immense strength and heroic deeds, he was depicted as a powerful mortal with divine parentage. His extraordinary abilities were attributed to his divine father, Zeus. Hercules was known for his 12 labors, which required immense strength and courage, but he was not depicted as a towering figure. Let's look at another of Zeus' children that he had with mortal woman. So this time, let's look at Perseus. He was not a giant either. He was a renowned Greek hero, known for his bravery and cunning. While he possessed extraordinary abilities and divine lineage, he was not depicted as a towering figure. His heroic deeds, such as slaying the Gorgon Medusa and rescuing Andromeda, were accomplished through his intelligence, skill, and the help of the gods. Now let's compare another of Zeus' children that he had with a mortal woman. This time around we look at Minos. He was not a giant either. He was a legendary king of Crete, known for his wisdom and just rule. While he has a powerful figure, he was not depicted as having superhuman size or strength. His significance lies in his role as a great lawgiver and the connection to the myth of Minotaur, a creature with a human body and a bull's head. Therefore, none of the children that Zeus fathered with mortal woman have any attributes of a giant. The Watchers and the fallen angels, they met their mortal woman by coming down from heaven and claimed them, or stranglemandered them and turning them into their wives or women. But let's look of how Zeus met his earthly woman. Let's look at how he met Dionysus' mother, Semele. Dionysus' mother, Semele, was a mortal princess, and Zeus, disguised as a mortal, encountered Semele in Thebes. He was captivated by her beauty and charm, and they began a secret affair. Despite knowing his true identity, Semele was deeply in love with him. However, their relationship faced challenges from Hera, Zeus's jealous wife. Hera, disguised as an old woman, sowed seeds of doubt in Semele's mind, leading her to request that Zeus reveal his true divine form. Bound by his oath, Zeus reluctantly complied, but the divine radiance was too much for mortal Semele, and she perished. Despite the tragedy, Zeus managed to save their unborn child, Dionysus, by sewing him into his thigh until he reached maturity. Dionysus was then born a second time and raised by the myths of Nysa. So Zeus did not claim Dionysus' mother. They fell in love, or Dionysus' mother fell in love with him, unlike the fallen angels and the Watchers, who demanded that mortal women be their wives or women. If the fallen angels or the watchers were living in a fantasy world, they could have created their own rules as they go along, so there can be a transition between divinity and mortality. Metaphorically speaking, it could mean that one loses his or her innocence, idealism, or connection to something greater. But in a religious point of view, divine beings are considered immortal and all-powerful. They don't possess a mortal form and can't simply shred it as they feel like. So, how comes the watchers or the fallen angels were either corrupted by human women or human women were corrupted by the watchers or the fallen angels? If we go by the religious point of view, in Abrahamic such as Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the concept of divine beings having sexual relationships with humans is generally not accepted. However, there are interpretations of certain biblical passages, such as those involving angels, that have been used to support such claims. In a philosophical and theological considerations, the nature of divinity is often described as transcendent, eternal, and beyond human comprehension. Some argue that such a being would not or could not engage in a physical act like sexual intercourse, which, if we follow this description, when the watchers and the human woman could not have sex, much less children. In a moral implications of the idea of a divine being having sexual relationships with a mortal raises ethical questions about consent, power dynamics, and the potential of abuse. Although Zeus was able to have children with human women or mortal, but Zeus is considered mythical, while the fallen angels and the watchers is not considered a myth. It is very religious and it's to deal with God, so it's not a mythical, it's real. These angels and watchers are divine in real spiritual religious belief and concept. So how were they able to have sexual relationship with mortal women that produce children? That is a concept that on a symbolic interpretation suggests that such myths may be symbolic representations of deeper spiritual truths rather than literal accounts of historical events. So we have to ask, can a divine ever commit a sin? So the concept of divine being sinning is a complex one, often explored in religious texts and philosophical discussions. Let's look at it first in a form of a traditional religious view. In monotheistic religions like Christianity and Islam, God prelude the possibility of sin in religions such as polytheistic religion may show different views. Angels and watchers may be considered suspect or may make mistake or acting immorally, and the transgression may not look the same way as a supreme being. However, looking at sin from a philosophical perspective, philosophers have suggested that the nature of divine being is defined as perfect and all-knowing, that it would be almost impossible for a watcher to sin, as sin would be deviation from perfection. So if a watcher get a mortal woman pregnant, that watcher has deviated from perfection and deviated from his cause or from his role that he should have played. From a theological interpretation of the watcher's sinning, in some religious traditions, such as Christianity, the fallen angels can deviate from their intended purpose and commit acts that may be considered sinful, but the relationships between the watchers and their supreme deity is often complex and debated. So the question is, did the watchers or angels get human women pregnant, as suggested by the biblical text? But this interpretation is not universally accepted, and there are a number of theological perspectives on the matter. Some scholars argue that the sons of God may be descendants of Seth, a righteous lineage who intermarried with the daughters of man, who were considered less righteous, and others say fallen angels took on physical form to engage in sexual relations with human women to produce a fallen state. So did human women corrupt the watchers? Or did the watchers corrupted the human woman? But if it is a cause and effect matter, which one happened first? The human woman were in a fallen state since Adam and Eve break the commandment given to them in the Garden of Eden by the angels from God. Therefore, the watchers could not have corrupted the human woman, so it must be the earthly beings who corrupted the watchers or the fallen angels. However, because the watchers are divine, they cannot just decide it one day to not be divine anymore, according to the traditional religious belief. And on a philosophical perspective, a divine being is defined as perfection and all-knowing. So it would be logically impossible for them to shred the divinity, as it inherently part of their being. So if anyone who was corrupted was the watchers, because humanity was already in a fallen state because of Adam and Eve's disobedience of God's commandments. However, the angels were there before Adam and Eve were created, and they witnessed Adam and Eve running around the Garden of Eden in their naked form. According to the book of Genesis, Adam and Eve was in the Garden of Eden naked for 7 years, according to the book of Jubilees. And guess who was there with them? The watchers and the angels. The watchers and the angels were there when Adam and Eve were made. And Adam and Eve were naked in the Garden of Eden for 7 years. And the angels or the watchers were not tempted to have an affair with Eve. So why, after Eve had died, that's when the watchers wanted to have sexual relationships with mortal women? Were the watchers copycats? The concept of divine beings having sexual relationships with mortal women is a theme found in various mythologies, including Greek and some Abrahamic traditions. However, these stories originate from different time periods and cultural contexts, and the Greek mythologies and the Abrahamic mythologies, those were predated the angels and the watchers. Greek mythology is filled with stories of gods and goddesses like Zeus, Poseidon, Hermes, Ares, and Dionysus, who often took lovers among mortal women. These myths were developed and recorded over centuries, with the earliest written accounts dating back to the Archaic period in the 6th centuries BC. The Watchers. Their concept of watchers are fallen angels who mated with human women is found in texts like the Book of Enoch and the Book of Genesis. These texts are part of the Jewish and Christian traditions and are believed to have been written or compiled between the 3rd century BC and the 1st century CE. While it is challenging to pinpoint exactly dates for the creation of these myths, it is clear that the Greek myths about gods and goddesses predate the stories of the Watchers. The Greek myths have roots in much older oral traditions. However, the Watchers' stories are more closely tied to specific religious texts and their development. Greek mythology predates Christianity by over 1,000 years. It is likely that Greek mythology is even older than the Greek writing system, so the exact start of its formation is unknown. Zeus was also mentioned in the Bible's book of Acts, showing that it predates Christianity when Paul and Barnabas' first missionary journey. In Acts 14 verse 12 to 14, the crowd calls Barnabas Zeus, and the priest of Zeus brings bulls and wreaths to the city gates to offer sacrifices. Jesus Christ was born as a child of a divine father, and his mother was mortal, but he was not a giant like the children of the Watchers. However, according to the Catholic Church, God did not have a sexual relationship with Mary. The scriptures state that Mary conceived Jesus through the power of the Holy Spirit while remaining a virgin. So this is the reason why we cannot compare Jesus' birth from a divine being, God, with Mary, because they did not have a sexual relationship, because Mary was still a virgin even when she was pregnant.